الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the best of tawfiq and success in the dunya and the akhirah, that He teaches us fiqh and He allows us to have the correct ta'weel. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us of those who are close to Him and not far away from Him. And also we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overlook our mistakes and our shortcomings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. This is another session where we are looking at a risala from the Rasail of Shaykh Muhammad Uthaymeen, and this is also an often discussed topic, especially at this time of year, which are what are some of the rulings concerning wiping over the sock. So the Shaykh, basically this risala that we've got here is roughly around 50 pages long, but we don't need to read the full 50. The Shaykh in this book has research on a couple of masail, so that's what makes it lengthy. So on one masala, maybe like 10 pages, but we can summarize that. And then the people who published this book, what they did is they got question and answers from the Shaykh on the topic of wiping over the socks, and they put it all together. So we've got question and answers, then we've got research on a couple of masail. So what we will do, inshallah, is read through the question and answers, because even the research that he put in, that is part of the question and answers anyway. But if the book ever gets translated, I think it has been translated, you can go back to it. Like I said, the purpose of these majalis is so that we can read through it, not that it compensates for you actually reading the book itself. But inshallah, we try to shed some light on it so that if a person does go back to it, they'll have a better understanding. So this is the risala. The risala is Fatawa fi Masih al-Khuffayn. Fatawa, like I said, is a compilation of question and answers on this topic, on wiping over the sock. Like we said last week as well, that because it is a risala, the purpose of it is just to keep it straight to the point. We're not really going to talk about difference of opinion between the different madhab. However, the Shaykh does talk about it in the research aspect of the book, and I think some discussion needs to be given to it because there are a lot of concerns. Some people say, should I wipe, should I not wipe? What are the conditions of wiping? I've had this and I've had that. And the Shaykh actually even talks about wiping over the imamah, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people haven't heard of. And then we've got wiping over the headscarf for sisters. So she's at work or she's in a public space, she needs to make wudhoo. Does she uncover her awrah to perform wudhoo? That's very important. And then connected to wiping as well is wiping over casts and plasters. So if a person's got an injury, say on his arm, and it's covered his whole arm, you can't wash it. So what does he do in that scenario? So we've kind of like summarized it to roughly around 20 questions. Question number 1, what is the meaning of the khuff? So now we have to understand that the khuff is the leather sock, and the Jawrab are the socks that are made out of any other material which is not leather. Now I often say this in our fiqh classes, that the khuff really as a function is more like a boot than it is a sock. It's quite often translated as a sock, and when people even wear it, it looks like a sock. But at the time of the Messenger of Rasulullah, really it had more of a function of a boot. And the reason why is because it was worn for protection, it was worn for durability, it was worn for walking great distances, etc. So really, in effect, we're asking is, what is the ruling on wiping over shoes or boots that we wear today? That's the closest analogy, I would say. And then socks. So now here, the reason why this question is important is because what we are basically saying here is that, as we will discuss the conditions, if it fulfills the conditions, whatever you wear on your foot, you can wipe over it. Whether you call it a sock, whether you call it a leather sock, whether you call it a boot, if you're wearing shoes and socks, we will see. Khuff is the leather one, and the Jawrab are the cotton ones. Now the majority of cotton at that time, but even wool at that time, but today typically cotton anyway, but you can get all these synthetic materials as well. So anything which is not leather is the Jawrab. Now the majority of the ulama from the four madhahib, including Abu Hanifa himself, rahimahullah, was of the view that you can wipe over leather socks. There is a consensus on that. And the Jawrab, the majority of the ulama, including Abu Hanifa himself, and it's been narrated from, some say 13 companions and some said 15 companions. that they used to wipe over the socks and they used to permit the wiping over socks. Question 2. What is the ruling of wiping over the Khuff and the Jawrab, and what is the evidence from the Kitab and the Sunnah? And like we have said, the Shaykh gives a little bit of dalil, but really the purpose of the Risala is to keep it short. Is there proof from the Kitab? Is there proof in the Quran that you can wipe? Well, the answer is yes. The ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is the ayah of Wudhoo and Ghusl, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Wudhoo and the Ghusl. So this is chapter number 5, ayah number 6. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. This can also be recited, وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ, with a kasra, وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. What does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the arjulakum way of reciting it, wash your feet to your ankles. But if you recite it in the other way, which is also mutawatir, it's wa arjulikum, meaning wipe your feet to the ankles. We also have the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, and there's a number of hadith, but this is in Bukhari and Muslim, this is what the Shaykh has brought to us. And this is the umdah on the topic really. I mean, this is the discussion where, this is the hadith where all discussion begins. And the background to this is Mughir bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu was accompanying the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Battle of Tabuk. When was the Battle of Tabuk? Battle of Tabuk, when was it? What year? You had a Sirah test, huh?
7.
That's Khaybar. After Khaybar. After Khaybar, 9, Zakallah khair. 7, Khaybar. 8, Fath. Tabuk, 9. Tabuk is at that time in Sham. Today is Saudi Arabia, but at that time it's considered Sham. Tabuk is cold. Tabuk is, the weather is not like how it is in Hijaz. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is travelling up to Tabuk for the expedition. Mughir bin Shu'bah is with him. In certain narrations it mentions the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is wrapped in a shawl and he's making the Rafa' Adain underneath the shawl. That's just side benefit, but we're trying to understand the context. The Imam had a shawl and he was wearing the Khuff. Now the reason why this is important is because this happens in the 9th year after Hijrah, and this is now proof to say that this wiping happened after Al-Ma'idah was revealed, which now means nobody can say, well, we'll give the ayah precedence over the wiping. Do you get the point there? Because a person can then say, well, he wiped, but the ayah was revealed afterwards, so that abrogates that one. No, that's not the case. The ayah was already there, wash to your feet. That's what they were already practicing. Mughir bin Shu'bah is accompanying the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. He now, out of khidmah and service to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he's the Messenger of Allah. Imagine the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was with you. Would you let him bow down and take his own socks off? You're going to try and help him to the best of your ability. So Mughir bin Shu'bah goes to take the socks off for the Messenger of Allah. The socks, I call it socks, but the boots off for the Messenger of Allah. He says, Da'huma. He says, leave them, Mughira. فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْن. This is Bukhari and Muslim. I entered into them, meaning I wore them whilst I was pure. فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. So Mughir bin Shu'bah said, then I saw the Messenger of Allah wiping over the leather socks. So now the question is, what's the proof? Kitab, Sunnah. He then gives us a statement from Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad said, there is no aversion in my heart about wiping. There are more than 40 ahadith that have come from the companions about wiping over the khuff. The issue is about the normal socks, which are not leather. Like I've said, majority of the ulama, I mean, there's ijma' on it really. It's even into the books of Aqidah that wiping over the khuff is part of our Aqidah. The reason why is the Rawafid, the Shia, they say you should wipe over your bare foot. Don't wipe over the sock. So that's why there is ijma' from the time of the companions. As for the Jawrab, as we have seen, we haven't seen really, the evidence hasn't been brought, but the ulama, from the majority of the ulama, they've included in it. And we don't want to make it lengthy, so we're not going to go into it, but we were just saying that the majority have accepted it. Right, question number 3. What are the authentic, established conditions for wiping over the socks? So now we've established it, now we've said that it's permissible. What are the conditions? There are 4 conditions that the Shaykh is saying, Uthaymeen. But other books of fiqh have additional conditions, and we'll talk about that. Number 1, you have to be in the state of purity when you wore the sock. Okay, so I've done wudhu, or I've done ghusl from major impurity, or I've done ghusl and then done the wudhu, and then I've put my sock on. Now I'm in tahara, and I put my sock on. First. Second condition, that the sock itself has to be pure. Pure meaning two things. The material itself is pure, so it can't be made out of something which is impure. And it can't have impurities on them. And included in that, the second condition, some of them have said that it has to be mubah. So now there's a third condition, which is that it has to belong to you. Imagine if I stole his socks and I wore them. Am I allowed to? Some of the ulama say, no, you can't. You have to return his socks. You can't wipe over it, even though it won't fit me. Story. Third condition, that he wipes when he is in the state of minor impurity. So now if he's in major impurity, he can't wipe. He has to do the ghusl. And then the fourth condition is that he sticks to the time period which has been allocated. In the hadith of Ali, this is Sahih Muslim, he says, radiyallahu anh, that the Messenger of Allah جعل الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم ثلاثة أيام ولياليهن المسافر, 3 days and 3 nights for the traveller, ويوم وليل المقيم, and for the resident, the day and the night. Resident, a day and a night. Right. So now we understand what the conditions are. Now we've seen the permissibility in it, etc. But now the question is, a day and a night, I understand that, but when does the day and the night begin? So now it's 4:30. I've done wudu, I put my sock on. Does it begin now 4:30? So do I have until 4:30 in the evening until tomorrow Saturday or not? This is where the scholars have differed. Hasan al-Basri has said, as soon as you put the sock on, that's when the day and the night begins. If you're resident, if you're traveling, then 3 days, that's when it begins. The majority of the ulama have said, as soon as you lose your wudu. So I've done wudu, I've put my sock on, 4:30. I lost my wudu at 9 o'clock. So the day and the night begins now, 9 o'clock. But the Hanafis have said, and this is the view of the Shaykh in the Risala, and this has also been narrated from Umar bin Khattab and Awza'i and others, they have said, no, it begins at the first wiping. It begins at the first wiping. Now, as you can see here, all three opinions could then fluctuate the duration quite heavily. I've done wudu and I put my sock on, it's 4:30. Yeah? When does the 24 hours begin? According to one opinion, it's already begun. According to the next opinion, the first time I lose my wudu, but I haven't lost my wudu, but I haven't done the wudu yet. So I lost my wudu at 9 o'clock, say I went to the toilet at 9 o'clock, but I haven't done wudu. I want to do wudu at 12 o'clock. So they have said, no, it's already begun at 9 o'clock. But the correct view, and this has come to us from the companions, is that the first time you wipe. So I've done wudu, I put my sock on, it's 4:30. When does the 24 hour begin? It hasn't begun yet. It begins at the first point of wiping. So say I wipe at midnight, I've got until midnight, until now Sunday, because now it's Saturday, Sunday. Question number 4. What is the correctness of the conditions set by the legal jurists that the feet must be covered? So now we have said that there are 4 conditions so far. Number 1, you have to be in a state of purity. Number 2, there can't be any major impurity involved. Number 3, that the Khuff or the Jawrab or the Jawrab is permissible. Number 4, that you stick to the time period. Number 5, this is another added condition. Now the Shaykh doesn't agree with this condition. He makes that clear. He said that this is a condition which has no evidence for it, which is that if you are wearing the sock or the boot or your shoes, whatever you want to wipe over, it has to cover your ankle. That's the view of the majority. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَىٰ الْكَعْبَيْنِ, wipe up to your ankle. So when you are wiping, you have to wipe to your ankle. How are you going to wipe to your ankle if you're wearing sandals, if you're wearing Crocs, if you're wearing something which is below the ankle? Okay? So now, either you're wearing the Khuff, or you're wearing the sock, or you're wearing a sock as well as a shoe. You know how we normally wear shoes and trainers? That's below the ankle. But because the shoe is connected to the sock, you can wipe over that, on the condition that that attachment remains. So say I put my shoe on now and it's below my ankle, I'm in the state of wudu, then I lost my wudu and now I want to wipe. Am I going to pray with my shoes on? Yeah, I'm going to pray with my shoes on. So you can wipe over that and pray, it's fine. But if you take your shoe off, your boot off, we're going to talk about that later on. But right now we're talking about, is it a condition that it has to meet the ankle? The majority of the ulama have said it has to meet the ankle. But the Shaykh is saying here, it's not a condition according to him. So even if you're wearing ankle socks, the Shaykh is saying, well, if it's still a jawrab, if it's still a sock, then it's a sock. You can wipe over it. But for me, what seems to be stronger, because of the ayah, is quite clear. There's another condition, so that's condition 5. Condition number 6, some of them said that it have to be something that you walk in. Now, you have to remember at that time as well, you don't have socks and shoes and boots like we have today. If a person is cold and wants to cover his feet, they might wrap something around it to keep themselves protected. If he walks in it, what's going to happen? It's going to fall off. So one of the conditions is that it sticks to your feet. If I walked in my socks for a mile, obviously with shoes on, etc., would something happen to the socks? No. So that's what they're basically saying, that it stays there, nothing is going to harm it, or it's not going to get damaged in any way. And then the sixth condition, or the seventh condition, is that, now this is important, because a lot of people are of the view that it has to be waterproof. There is nothing in the Kitab and Sunnah that says you have to have waterproof clothing in order for you to do the wiping. Because the concept of having something waterproof didn't exist at that time. But what they mean is, and this is why we say waterproof, but what the actual fuqaha have said, is that if you were to wipe over the sock, if the material is so thin that the water is going to seep through straight away and it's going to make your feet wet anyway, then that has defied the purpose as to why you're wearing this piece of footwear. Really, you should be taking your sock off and then washing. Because you've wiped over it and the water's going straight through anyway, so then really you should be washing. So that's what they have said. So waterproof, not waterproof, I mean, that's probably the easiest way for us to understand it, but this is what the ulama have said, that if a person wipes and the water doesn't... Now there's a difference between feeling the wetness. Now if I wipe over this, the cotton's going to absorb it and I'm going to feel the wetness. That's not harmful. That doesn't defy this condition. What we are saying here is that if I got water and I put it straight through and all of it's going to go straight through, it's as if I'm not wearing anything there, then we will say that person should not wipe over it. Question number 5. If a person does tayammum, now again, this might not apply to a lot of us, but there are people who are in hospitals, etc., who are performing tayammum. The person does tayammum, and then he wears the sock. Now he's doing wudhoo because the concession for tayammum is over. Can he wipe over the sock with the tahara of tayammum? And the Shaykh is saying no. And the reason why is because the tayammum doesn't involve the feet. So in the hadith where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said, leave them, I have entered them in the state of purity, meaning I entered in the state of wearing these khuff after washing it, now I'm going to wipe. Therefore, there is no such thing as, according to what the Shaykh is saying, and this is the view of the majority anyway, that you wipe after doing a tayammum. Question number 6. Does he need a niyyah? So when I'm wearing my socks, do you have to have a niyyah that I'm going to wipe over them? The Shaykh says no. Because wearing socks is not an act of worship. Wearing socks is not an act of worship. Doing the wudhoo is an act of worship. Now, if you have fulfilled the conditions, this is the question, now can I wipe over it? So there's a difference between wearing the garment and performing the wudhoo. Question number 7. Is wiping the socks permissible in all journeys? Or is it permissible only in journeys which are permissible for you to go on? What that basically means is if a person... Now this isn't just about wiping over socks. This is just taking the concession of being a traveller in general. If the person is travelling, say he's going from Leicester to London to visit his family, that is a permissible journey. Maybe it's even a mustahab journey. That person can take all the concessions of a traveller. He can shorten, he can combine, he can break his fast, he can wipe over his socks for 3 days, etc. But the discussion here between the ulama from the time of the Salaf is if the person is going for the purpose of something haram, not involving something haram, the purpose is haram. So now you go to your relative's house, they might be watching TV, there might be something that's haram, but that's not the reason why you went there. So that's fine, you can take the concession. But a person goes from Leicester to London to do something haram. Can he then take the concession of being a traveller? The majority of the ulama have said no, this is not allowed. The Shaykh is saying it is allowed because he is travelling, and this is also the view of the Hanafi madhab. But what is apparent, what the Shaykh is saying here as well, that it is allowed. For me, what seems to be more correct is that it is not allowed. But the Shaykh gives us a narration, and this is in Tirmidhi, and it's been made Sahih by Tirmidhi, and it's in other books as well. Safwan ibn Assal, radiallahu anhu, he said, the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu, whenever we used to travel with him, he said to us, do not remove your khuff for the period of 3 days and 3 nights, illa min janaba, except if you are in the state of janaba, which is major impurity. He's using this to say, إِذَا كُنَّا سَفْرًا, when we used to travel. Travel is travel. So as long as the person is traveling, then he can take the concession. But for me, what seems to be stronger is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a concession for people who are doing something which is good. You can't do something bad and say I'm taking the concession as well at the same time. Excuse me. Question number 8. A person starts off as resident, then he travels. Or the person travels and he comes back. Excuse me. And he comes back and now he is resident. What does he do in that scenario? The Shaykh is saying here, when the resident wipes over his socks and then he starts the journey, he completes as being a traveller. And this is the strongest. Basically what we're saying here is, if the person is resident, then he travels. Or he's a traveller, then he's resident. What's his situation? Is it how he started, or is it how he finds himself in? And the correct opinion is how he finds himself in. That's the principle, and you can apply that to anything. Right, tomorrow, Salat al-Dhuhr begins at 12:04. I'm travelling to London 12:15. 12:04, as soon as 12:04 comes in, it's wajib for me to pray Dhuhr, meaning I'm accountable to pray Dhuhr because the time has begun. But I haven't prayed. And I'm on purpose now heading to the motorway because I need to be there. Am I, when I do pray Dhuhr, praying Dhuhr as a resident or as a traveller? It's the same thing here, which is you are going to do the act of worship based on the situation when you're performing the act of worship, not how it began. This is your situation now. So this is what he is saying. I'm a resident. I've worn my sock at 4:30. I did wudhoo at 8 o'clock, so the first wiping now has begun at 8 o'clock, so the time has begun at 8 o'clock. And then I'm travelling the next day at, say, 6 o'clock in the morning. If I travel at 8 o'clock in the morning, the time has expired, but I've left the city within the time before it expires. Do I finish at 8? Or do I finish 3 days, 24 hours, maybe 48 hours beyond? This is what we're saying here. No, he then takes the concession because this is the hal that he finds himself in, and the other way around. The person is traveling. He's worn the same socks for 2 days. He's wiped over them for 2 days because he's got the concession. He comes home. Immediately he needs to take his socks off and wash and do wudhu again. Why? Because the time has expired, because now he is in the state of being resident. The Shaykh says some of the scholars have differed. Some of them said is how you start off. So if you start off as resident, you finish as resident. And if you start off as traveller, then you finish as traveller. But the Shaykh is saying here, this view is more correct. Question number 9. A person is doubtful as to when he started wiping over the socks. What should he do? I wore my sock at 4:30 after doing wudhu. I know that because this is what I do every day. Or let's just make it more realistic. I wore my sock at 5 to 7 before I went for Salat al-Fajr, put the sock on. I'm in a state of tahara. But the question here is now, today I didn't wear a sock when I went for Fajr, but I wore my socks sometime afterwards. I don't know now. What do we do in that scenario? The Shaykh is saying here, this is a principle. Al-aslu baqa ma kan ala ma kan. The asl is we go back to how it was in the first place. So now, how was my foot in the first place? No sock. Therefore, if there is a doubt, then there is an absence of wiping. This is the asl. Question number 10. A person wipes over his socks after the period of wiping has expired. What is the ruling on that? He thought that he had concession. It's beyond 24 hours. Or even more realistic than that, actually. This occurs quite often, where a person says, I thought I had wudu, I put my sock on, then I wiped over it, but then I remembered that I didn't have wudu in the first place. It's the same thing here, because he's gone against the conditions. The person has wiped after 24 hours. It's been now, let's say, 25 hours, and he's wiped thinking that he had some time left. The answer to that question, the Shaykh is saying here that the salah is invalid and he needs to repeat. He needs to take the sock off, he needs to do wudhu from fresh, and then he needs to pray the salah again. But here's another mas'ala which is connected to it. When the time expires, does the wudhu expire? I put my sock on at 4:30 with wudhu, I did my first wiping at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock tomorrow night, I still not lost my wudu, let's say, for example. Or let's say I lost my wudu, but I did wudu within that period. That's more realistic. So I did wudu at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, but my period of wiping finishes at 8 o'clock. Come 8 o'clock, is the wudu immediately invalidated or not? The Shaykh is saying here, he still has wudu. And this is the view of Hassan Basri, Qatada, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, al-Nawawi, Ibn Taymiyyah and others. The majority of the ulama have said, when the period is over, then the wudu is over. He needs to take the sock off and wash, meaning do wudu from afresh. What seems to be more correct is that there is no dalil to say that when the time period is over, the wudu is broken. What it means is that he hasn't got the concession anymore, but the wudu is still there. Based on the principle that we just said, al-asl, al-baqa, al-baqa, ma kan ala ma kan. So leave the thing as it was. Question number 11. If a person removed his sock and he was in a state of wudu, number one, does that invalidate the wudu? Now the majority of the ulama have said yes, taking off your sock invalidates the wudu. And for me that seems to be stronger. That's not the view of the Shaykh, and it's not the view of Ibn Taymiyyah and others, but for me that seems to be stronger. I did wudu, I put my sock on. I took my sock off before I lost wudu. Then I put my sock back on. Can I wipe over it? With me on that so far? The answer is yes, because I'm still in a state of purity. Right? I did wudu, I put my sock on. I took my sock off, I didn't like it, wanted to wear another pair. Then I put another pair on. Can I wipe over this sock? Now, the next second I've lost my wudu. The answer is yes, because when I put them on, I had tahara. Right, that's the first one. Second scenario, the person did wudu, put the sock on, lost the wudu, then took the sock off. There is no difference of opinion on that, is that he needs to do wudu again by washing the feet. The person does wudu, puts the sock on, then takes the sock off. This is now the next masala now. This is a separate one. By taking the sock off, does that invalidate the wudu? That's the question. So then the Shaykh is saying, if he's still got wudu, then there's no problem. But if he lost wudu, he can't wipe over it because he's not in a state of purity. But the question is, by taking the sock off, does that invalidate the wudu? The majority of the ulama have said yes, and for me that seems to be stronger. And the reason why is, as one of our mashayikh, he says, if I've done wudu, if I've done wudu by wiping over my sock, and then I've taken my sock off, my wudu is incomplete. My feet now are in a situation of not being washed and not being wiped. Therefore, what's the situation with my feet? There's nothing there. But the Shaykh is the counter argument to that. The Shaykh is saying there's no dalil to say that by taking off your sock, that the wudu is invalidated. In actual fact, they make a qiyas. Brother Umar's got nice, lovely, long hair. He does wudu, and then he goes for a haircut. The hair that he's wiped over has been cut off. Has that invalidated the wudu? None of the scholars will say that because you have had a haircut, that your wudu is not over. So they have said, if you're saying that about having a haircut, it's the same thing here. He's wiped over it, he's now entered into the state of tahara. Just by removing something, where's your dalil to say that it has invalidated the wudu? But for me, what seems, like I said, needs to be stronger is that you haven't completed. And this is why the Hanafis and the Malikis have said, if you've taken your sock off, just go wash your feet and then that's fine. If you don't wash your feet, then it is invalidated. But we will say that's a problem as well, because wudu needs a sequence. And you can't just wash your foot isolated for you then to complete your wudu. Question number 13. A person wipes, then applies a second sock. I did wudu, I put my sock on, then I put another sock on, no problem, because I've entered both of those socks in a state of purity. No problem with that. But the question is now here, I did wudu, I put the sock on, I lost my wudu, then I did wudu by wiping, now I've put another layer, another sock, another layer really, like I said, it could be a shoe, could be a boot, could be Wellington boots, could be army boots. In Saudi Arabia, this is what they do all the time. They wear army boots. They don't take them off. You see them in the haram. They don't take them off. They wipe over it. Why? Because it covers the conditions of the 7 that we mentioned. It covers the ankles, etc. Anyway, the point here is, then I've put something on top after wiping. Can I wipe over the top layer or not? The Shaykh is saying here there's a difference of opinion on that. Some said you can only wipe over the bottom layer because that's what you started off wiping with, so you need to take the top layer off. But the Shaykh is saying here the correct view is that you can wipe over the second layer. This is due to the generality of that hadith of Mughira bin Shu'bah, where he says, "Da'huma, leave them, فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْن." That because you entered into the state of purity with the second sock, with the second layer, then it is permissible for you to wipe over that. However, and this is also the view of Imam Nawawi, however, they have got 2 separate timings. You have to pay attention to that. I mean, I don't think it's feasible or likely that a person is going to keep their socks on for a whole day and a night, 24 hours, without taking them off. But I mean, it could be if it's really cold, or a person can find themselves in a situation, even health situations, etc. But if you do find yourself in that situation, then you have to remember that the first layer has its own timing, which is separate to the second. Right, question number 14 of 20, I think. Many people ask, how should the wiping be done? So what is the method of wiping? The Shaykh is saying here that we wipe by passing the right over the right and the left over the left, starting from the toes, moving to the ankle. And you do it simultaneously. So number 1, you get fresh water, because sometimes I've even seen this with people, they do the muscle over the head, do the ears, and whatever's left, because the hands are already wet, they wipe it over the socks. Inshallah, there's nothing wrong with that because they've still wiped. But the sunnah is that the Messenger of Allah, in this hadith, the Messenger of Allah took some water and then he wiped over the khuff. So the first thing is you take fresh water to wipe. The second thing is, now you are spreading your hands out so that they are spreading over your foot. You're not going to spread it out, excessively, and you're not going to keep your fingers close together. Just naturally, passing your hands over your feet. Starting from the toes, simultaneously, so the right and the right and left and left, you're doing it together at the same time, up to the ankle. Some people, you will see them, they'll do the right and then they'll do the left. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, inshallah, but he has to, it's sunnah for him to do it simultaneously. Not that he has to, it's simultaneous, it's sunnah. Do we wipe the sole? Now you might actually see this, I've actually seen this, people do it in the haram, where they will, obviously from different madahib and different countries, etc., that they wipe the top bit and they wipe the sole bit as well. This is the view of the Malikiyya and some of the Shafi'iyya. But the correct view, as Ali ibn Abi Talib said, he said, had this religion been a religion of just using pure logic, then wiping the bottom would make more sense because that's the bit that gets dirty. But he said, radiallahu anhu, that I saw the Messenger of Allah sallallahu wipe ala dhahiri khuffay, that he wiped on the top of his khuff. Therefore, you don't wipe the bottom bit, you just wipe over the top bit. Question 16, we've already done that because the person could say that the wiping came after the revelation of Ma'idah, but we talked about that before. Question 17, are the rulings for women and men different? The Shaykh says there is no distinction between men and women in this, unless if there is evidence which indicates otherwise. Now, why is that important? That's important because sisters wear footwear which is different to us men. Sometimes it goes up to their knees. Sometimes it goes all the way to the top, to their waist. So can they wipe over that? The answer is yes, they can wipe over that. So sometimes they wear different things, but what we'll say is that the same conditions and the same rulings apply. Number 18, what is the ruling of removing the sock to examine your foot, but you've not taken the sock off completely? So now, you're wearing a sock, right? And a stone has gone inside your sock. That happens sometimes. Something goes inside. Can you pick it out or not? The Shaykh is saying here, if you put your hand in the sock without removing the sock, there is no problem in that. So I've actually wiped over these socks, but just to show you here, if there's something there, I put my hand in it, I take it out, so no problem in that. Even if you had to move the sock, so remember we're not trying to bring it below the ankle, even if you have to move the sock slightly below the ankle, there's no problem in that. That doesn't affect the ruling. But the majority of the ulama have said when you have taken off your sock, or most of the sock has come off, then that's it, the ruling no longer applies. So let's say, for example, a person is walking and his sock keeps falling down. If he keeps pulling it up before it falls below his ankle, then that's fine. But if it keeps falling down, then that's it, the ruling is over. Can you wipe over socks? What question is this? I think this is the last question now when it comes to socks. I think it's question number 19. Can you wipe over socks that have holes or tears in them? Now, the majority of the ulama have said yes, on the condition that the sock is no longer, or is still seen as being a sock in its function. So I've got a sock now here, there's no holes in it, but say there was a hole in it, you wouldn't say, okay, throw that away. It's acceptable that you have a couple of holes, a couple of tears, etc. But if it becomes like really big, like you see, like some people, they're like, got potatoes there, then you will say, look, actually, you got a potato on your foot, take your sock off, go get another one on. Or you say, well, what's he wearing? Why is he wearing that? So we will say, in that scenario, and this is what the majority have said, a lot of skin can now be seen, you can't wipe over that. Others from the ulama, al-Thawri, he says, أمسه عليه ما دام يسمى خفا. As long as it is called a khuff or a jawrab or a sock, then wipe over it. It doesn't matter if it's got loads of holes in it or not. But for me, what seems to be stronger is that if it's really big and you don't consider that as being a functional sock anymore, then you can't wipe over that. Right, question number 21. I think there's about 2-3 questions here about turbans. And turbans apply to the khimar also. And then 1 or 2 questions about bandages, and that would bring us to the end. 21. Is it permissible to wipe over the turban? What are the definitions? What are the limits, etc.? Now, the majority of the ulama have said, in loose terms, that you can wipe over turbans. What is a turban? A turban is any kind of headgear. Now, again, the issue here isn't about wiping over the turban. The issue is about the conditions as to what we're going to call a turban. The reason why is that at the time of the Messenger of Allah, an imama was an imama. But even like, you know how you see the shemagh, that used to be also called an imama. That also used to be called a khimar. Men used to wear khimar, but that's the meaning of the khimar, not khimar like with sisters. So this is the issue, and this is why you've got differences of opinion between the madhahib. The evidence for this, let's start off with the evidence. Bilal radiallahu anh, he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is in Sahih Muslim, masaha al-khuffayn wal-khimar. Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over the khuff, the leather socks, and he wiped over his khimar. So what's the khimar? Not the khimar. What's the khimar that he's wearing? He's wearing the imam. Therefore, that's the establishment of that. The Hanabila, and this is what the Shaykh is saying, so we'll just stick to what the Risala says, but some of them have said it goes back to what is urf, and what goes back to what is customarily seen as headgear. So now here, there isn't any difference between the ulama, which is what is worn on the head, which is permissible for you to wipe over, is that which is difficult for you to take off. This skull cap, baseball cap, woolly hat, I don't know what other kind of hats people wear. If you're able to take it off with ease, then you've got no concession, because you can take it off and wipe over it. And this is the same thing which now applies to the hijab for the sisters, because it's firmly wrapped around their head. So now, if it's difficult for the brother to take it off because of whatever condition that he finds himself in, weather or whatever it could be, or the sister, it's difficult for her to take off because she's in a public place, or she's at work, or there are non-mahrams around or something like that, can you wipe over it? The answer for the brother and the sister, the answer is yes. In another hadith, this is a hadith of Salama, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Imsahu al khuffayn wal khimar." So he's speaking to the women now. Wipe over the khuffayn, the leather socks, and wipe over the khimar. Therefore, this is the view of many of the scholars, where they have said if you've got a headgear which is stuck to your head and you can't take it off, then it's permissible for you to wipe over it. Others from the ulama have said no, the ayah clearly says you have to wipe over your head, not over your headgear. Therefore, you can't. And the Malikiyya have said, yes, you can wipe over your headgear on the condition that it is thin, so that the water will seep through, so that you have then done what it says in the ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to wipe. The Shaykh hasn't talked about the sisters' khimar, but there is something that the ulama have mentioned. So now sisters can wipe over the hijab on the condition that it's wrapped around their head, meaning it goes around their head and underneath their chin and their jaw, yeah. If it is open, like we have said before, then what excuse have you got? Because everything is open, you can easily get your hand in there to wipe over your head. But if it's wrapped around, that means she's concealing her aura, and it's difficult for her to remove that. Then we will say, yeah, you can wipe over the hijab on the condition that it's wrapped around firmly on your head. Question number 24. Now, 24 and 25 is concerning the bandage and the splint or the cast. Now, different to socks, boots, shoes, the imama and the khimar, is that in this, the person doesn't have to be in a state of tahara before he wipes. Because the person has been afflicted with an injury, the doctors put it around their foot or their arm or something. You can't say to him, well, were you in the state of tahara before you put your imam on, or before you put your khimar on, or before you put your hijab on, or before you put your sock on? You can't. So one of the first things that we have to understand, that it is permissible for a person to wipe over the bandage, subject to conditions. Condition number 1, the Shaykh is saying here, if the injury is uncovered and he can wash and it's not going to harm him, then he should do so. That injury does not prevent him from doing wudhu and ghusl. Second scenario, if the injury is uncovered but he can't wash and the doctor says don't wash, if you wash then you could get infected or something, then we will say don't wash, do everything else, but this area just wipe over it. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. Third scenario, the injury is uncovered, he can't wash, he can't wipe. What do we do in that scenario? Do everything else and then do tayammum. So do wudhu and do ghusl. When you have finished that, dry up, get the earth, tayammum. Those are the scenarios if the injury is uncovered. The last scenario the Shaykh gives is that you've had an injury happen straight away. You've got no control over it. The doctor somebody puts a bandage around it. What do we do about this now? So the Shaykh says here, if you wash over it, is it going to be harmed? Yes, possibly. I mean, now they use like fiberglass material and things like that. So even if you washed over it, there's no problem. But let's just say, if you're able to wash over it, wash over it. If you can't wash, then you wipe. But this is a very big difference here. Number 1, you don't have a niyyah. Number 2, you don't have the entering to the state of tahara, like we said about socks and hijab and etc. And number 3, the biggest difference here is that there has to be a need. There has to be a need. So if you've got an injury and he's put a cast on, but you're able to take the cast off and wash or wipe, then you have to wash and wipe. But if it's repairing and the doctor said, no, leave it the way it is, so there is a need now. And then number 4, now this is very important because a lot of people are negligent of this, and I've seen people be negligent of it, is that when you are now wiping over the cast, you have to make sure that you wipe on all parts. So say you've got a cast on your arm, some people, they might just, because they're thinking of wiping over socks, they might just do the apparent bit and not wipe all over it. No, there is no qiyas between that and wiping over the khuff. Here we're basically saying here, this limb still needs to be washed because it is part of wudhu and ghusl. If you can't wash it, then we move to wiping. So the whole limb is now still subject to washing and wiping. If you can't do that, then there are narrations from the Messenger of Allah and understanding from the companions that you would do tayammum instead. If you can't do tayammum either, and this happens, one of your elderly relatives has a cataract operation. So cataract here is where a layer of skin goes over your eye, so now you can't see anymore. In order for them to remove that skin, they have to let it grow fully. When it's fully grown, then they do the operation. So now they can't see. They go to the hospital. They'll take that layer of skin off. But then what they'll do is they'll put a bandage. It will say 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. Make sure you don't get it wet. What do you do in that situation? So now they can't do ghusl. They can't get it wet. They can't do wudhu. They can't even wipe over it. And you can't do tayammum either. Because if you can't put water in, how are you going to put sand or mud? So now the fourth scenario with that now is you don't do anything. Just leave it. Now with that, there is a different series of masail. Some of the ulama have said you do qada. So then, okay, right now you still pray, but you do qada afterwards. This is what the Hanafis and the Shafi'is said. The Malikis have said you are not mukallaf at all now. Because you can't do wudu, how are you going to pray? So you wait until you become mukallaf, meaning you become accountable, until the bandage is then removed. Then you make qada for everything. But the Hanabila, and this seems to be more practical, and for me seems more correct, in light of the evidences where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا, is that if the person is not able to do wudu, then he's not able to wash, then he's not able to do tayammum, then you just pray in the hal that he is in the situation that he is. This now, alhamdulillah, like I've said, it's a very beneficial risala. It's straight to the point. A lot of it is question and answers. There's a couple of bits of research in this, if you do go back to it, but I think we've talked about those masail anyway, because even the issues where he was researching, they were included in the question and answers. And that now concludes for us this lesson. There's no dars next week, and there's no dars the week after that, because this conference is taking place. We will continue with our Friday sessions on the 10th of January, inshallah, after Maghrib, at the same time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the best of tawfiq and success, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the best of implementation. هذا والله أعلم صلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Yeah.
Got 2 questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, how far up the socks you have to go?
To wipe?
Yeah.
Up to the ankle.
Secondly,
Yeah.
so in this situation it's cold, so I've got sports leggings on, yeah?
Yeah.
So I can go up to here, it's fine,
Yeah. What has to be wiped is up to the ankle. If you wanted to go above that, it's entirely up to you. But what has to be wiped is the ankle. Yes, Yunus.
Let's say if you do wudu, then you put your socks and shoes on, and then you lose your wudu, but then put your shoes on, and you put it back and you still wipe over it.
No, why? Okay, so he's done wudu,
Yeah.
he put his shoes and socks on.
Yeah.
Then he lost wudu.
Yeah.
He can wipe over the shoes and socks.
No, like.
One second, that's the first scenario, okay?
Yeah.
Second scenario, which is your question now, he did wudu, he put the shoes and socks on. Then he lost wudu, then he took it off.
No, only his shoes.
Only his shoes.
Yeah.
No socks.
The socks are still there. But the socks, he had tahara when he put them on.
No, like can he put his shoes on, then wipe over it?
No, because when you put the shoe on, you have to be in a state of tahara. You understand?
Yeah.
So if he's in the state of tahara and he's got the shoes and socks on, then he can wipe over it. So when he takes his shoe off, he has no tahara. And then he puts the shoe back on, there's still no tahara. Can he wipe over the shoe? No, because the shoe hasn't been put on with tahara. Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't that count as a second layer?
Second layer can be wiped over as long as you're in the state of tahara. As long as you're in the state of
The
wudu.
first layer is
The first one, yeah, he's not asking about the first, he's asking about the second one. You see? Yeah. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, it's about the wiping over the cast.
Yeah.
Sometimes the cast absorbs the water.
Mm.
So how much water do you need to use?
Anything which is considered as wiping, anything which is considered as wiping. If the person is, because the purpose, you see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to wash in certain parts and wipe in certain parts. The ulama have said that if he washed where he was supposed to wipe and wiped where he was supposed to wash, it wouldn't be accepted. So if he wiped water on his face instead of washing it, it wouldn't be accepted. So now what we're basically saying, this is what the person should stick to. But because he's not able to wash, but he's able to cover it with water in a way which is not going to harm him, then he should do so. That's basically what we're saying. But even if that wiping is going to harm him, like we gave the example of the woman with the cataract, I'm thinking about the woman because this is a question that was asked, then we will say move on to tayammum. if you can do tayammum. But because tayammum involves the hands and the face, and she had it on her face, they will say, okay, you can't do any of that, and just pray as you are.
My question wasn't about the harm.
Sorry. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
it was more about the because it might dry halfway, so I might not be able to wipe the rest of my arm.
Okay.
Because maybe here,
Yeah.
let's say here,
Yeah.
halfway, it's already dry my hand, so
Yeah.
I'm basically wiping with a dry hand.
Yeah.
Would there be any problem, or you can just?
No, you take more water then. You mean your hand is dry, or yeah?
Would you take more?
Yeah, you take more water. Yeah. That's what we meant. That all parts have to be made sure that they're wiped over.
Okay.
So if you're, for example, your arm, you've got 3 washes on your arm,
Yeah.
which would then mean you've got 3 wipes on your arm. So if the first wipe doesn't cover, take some more, but make sure you do it in the 3. وفيكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
Is there any rules to wiping this way?